Cloud. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here, or for anyone who will be watching in the future, to something we once called Learning with Der Nister, which is an old series of ours that was really the origin of how Der Nister could operate during the pandemic. And we're bringing it back for a very special guest. I have Yevgeniy Fiks here, Moscow-born, New York-based artist, author, and organizer of art exhibitions. Among his projects are A Gift to Birobidzhan, Landscapes of the Jewish Autonomous Region, and Himl and Erd, the Yiddish Cosmos, that have been exhibited at 2B Galleria Budapest, Gallery Sator in Paris, 21st Projects, Critical Practices Incorporated in New York, and CCI Fabrica in Moscow. His performance pieces, Lily Golden, Harry Haywood, Langston Hughes, Yelena Khanga, Claude McKay, Paul Robeson, Robert Robinson on Soviet Jews, and Red Kaddish, have been performed at the International Print Center in New York and at the Museum at Eldridge Street, a landmark synagogue story, both in New York. I became first familiar with Yevgeniy's work when I encountered it at the Vendy Museum, which will hopefully be the home of future LA Yiddish Day. It was very fascinating. There was both the natural landscapes of Birobidzhan exhibited there, Sovietish cosmos were exhibited there, and it was my first experience having visual art challenge and provoke my ideas about Yiddish, which was a new experience for me, and it might be a new experience for other people. But I'll let Yevgeny introduce his experiences and his background further, and then share with us a bit about some of the work specifically around this.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Golden. It's great to be with Derniste virtually, and so it's great to be here, and I'm glad to share my work with you and show you different Yiddish related projects that I um, worked on or still working on. I'll share my screen and show some images. Um, so I want to share first this project called Himmel und Erd, or Yiddish Cosmos. It's from about 10 years ago, and it's about uh, intersection of the Soviet Jewish story and the story of the space exploration, Soviet space program. I have a collection of issues of Sovietish Himl, which was a Soviet Yiddish language magazine published between the 1960s and 1990s. And I noticed that in several issues there are poems about space exploration. There are interviews with Soviet cosmonauts in Yiddish on the pages of a Soviet Yiddish magazine. So I thought it's an interesting side of Soviet Jewish culture, but so I created a body of work where I try to connect the Soviet Jewish story and the story of Soviet space exploration. And this image that you see right now, it's a photograph of Boris Volynov, who was first uh, the first Jew in space. He was a Soviet cosmonaut whose story um, had a lot to do with the story of Soviet anti-Semitism. He was a friend of Gagarin and from the same cohort of cosmonauts. He was supposed to fly maybe second or third after Yuri Gagarin in early 1960s, but uh, because of Soviet anti-Semitism, he was only able to fly in late 1960s. 1969 was his first mission, and then his second mission was in 1976. Boris Volanov. So here I am using his official portrait, and then I overimpose Yiddish letters for USSR, kind of making the Russian abbreviation for USSR is still visible, but then there is a Yiddish abbreviation. I'm overlaying it, but uh, showing kind of some type of conflict or unresolved issue here. Uh, and So this image has to do with the Polish-born Soviet space scientist Ari Sternfeld. So so here in this image, he talks to Soviet cosmonauts in the 1960s. But in his memoirs, Ari Sternfeld, the space scientist, talks about being a young Jewish boy in the Polish city, um, early 20th century, and kind of imagining the moon, imagining the stars, and so according to his narrative, to his story, his interest in science comes from his Jewish upbringing. Uh, but um, but it's one of, I guess, contradictions of the Soviet space program, um, and one of contradictions, you can say, of the Soviet Jewish experience. Um, in a way, um, the extreme attachment of Soviet Jews to science was almost like a replacement of lost Judaism over the course of the 20th century. So in this project, I'm trying to merge, yes, the Soviet Jewish story, the Yiddish story, and the story of space exploration. So this is image. Half of this image is Sholem Aleichem, the great Yiddish writer, and half is the Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space. Um, so this image also, it's a playful kind of um, juxtaposition of Yuri Gagarin with his two young daughters in Moscow in 1960s. On the right, and on the left is the chief rabbi of Moscow, Levin, with his granddaughters. This is also happening in 1960s, right? So this is all uh, Soviet 1960s or 1960s in Moscow. So more images from Yiddish um, Yiddish cosmos or Himl on Earth. So the story of Jewish immigration from the Soviet Union is, I'm linking it also to the story of the Soviet space program. Um, this idea of leaving and moving and going to another place, um, imaginary place, a new place, leaving restrictions behind. Um, so it's an image of the Soviet space station that I translated. I translated the parts of the Soviet space station into Yiddish, but in my less than perfect Yiddish. But translation is mine. So in some images I'm translating myself, and in some images I'm kind of hiring a professional translator to do the work. Um, so on this image, you have the three great writers of the Yiddish literature at the top, Peretz, Sholem Aleichem, and Moicher Sforim. And at the bottom you have Soviet cosmonauts. Uh, Only one of them is Jewish, but still it's part of the uh, Himl on Earth of Yiddish cosmos. So these images that I just showed you, they um, combine fact and fiction, or playing with facts and connecting facts in a playful manner. Um, these images also connect uh, um, fact and fiction, and they have to do with Volov Gordon, or Vladimir Gordon, who was an anarchist in 1920s in the Soviet Union. And he was a rabbi's son from Lithuania, but active in kind of left-wing circles, in anarchist circles in the Russian Empire and then the Soviet Union. So he came up with a language. He invented a language. He was a native Yiddish speaker, um, but he invented a language that he called AO. So this is the name of the language. It's one of those synthetic languages. You write them in code. It's basically code, and it's a language. The way Vladimir Gordon imagined it, or Wolf Gordon imagined it, it was supposed to be a language for interplanetary communication. So it was a language for, it would be a language that both humans and stars and planets would understand. So it's some type of transformational synthetic language for the future, right? So it was a utopian language. This is not the only synthetic utopian language that has been created historically, but I am very conscious of the fact that Wolf Gordon comes from the Yiddish background, so I'm creating this project, these images in which I combine Yiddish and AO, this imaginary language that Wolf Gordon created. I also add some English, some Russian. Um, so it's several images or posters. When I exhibit them in exhibitions, they are large-scale posters in which I talk about kind of about this language, AO. And this is part of the Yiddish Cosmos project, because it's also about connection, between Yiddish and this daring invention of a cosmic language, universalist interplanetary language. So Wolf Gordon really believed that, he didn't believe in any national, international languages. He felt that, uh, yeah, a language um, should be even more, um, more inclusive, or more connected to living and non-living um, speakers, so to say. Um, so I'm using texts. Some of the quotes on these posters come from Vladimir Gordon's, Wolf Gordon's writing, his, little textbook that he put together about this language, AO. The language is called AO. Um, Zach, should I continue with Birobidzhan work, or?
Let's just stop here, and I just want to ask you a couple follow-up questions, and then just the format of this is that at the very end we'll open it up for everyone's questions for everything. But I just wanted to follow up with a couple questions about this project first. Um, so I was interested to see that. there was a connection that you were making not just between the Soviet project and the Jewish interest in space and the cosmos, but also the Jewish need to exit and escape somewhere. That somewhere might actually be the cosmos in this theoretical way, whether it's talking about that very directly, or something escapist about what was printed in Sovetish Heimland. Is this an analysis that would make sense that this is both a project that was entangled with the Soviet Union, but also in a way maybe a fleeting desire to escape somewhere beyond borders?
Certainly, when Sovietish Himl, the Soviet Yiddish magazine, would publish articles about cosmos um, or poems about cosmos, of course, they I think wanted to normalize the Soviet Jewish life in the Soviet Union, and to make a case that the story of Soviet space exploration is a perfectly legitimate topic for a Jewish magazine, and Jews are part, according to the Sovietish Heimland, Jews are part of the Soviet life, mainstream Soviet life. So every subject that would a regular Soviet citizen be interested in, a Jewish citizen would also be interested in. But for the artistic purposes, in my project, I certainly expanded, right? And I use the Soviet in some images. I use the Soviet imagery or Soviet official Soviet imagery as some type of um, exit strategy, right? And connecting it with Let My People Go movement, right? For the immigration of Soviet Jews. This is, of course, something that, Sovietish Heimland would never associate with, right? So I'm taking liberties with these images and kind of maybe departing from Sovietish Heimland's imagery, but then, um, you know, introduce images that talk about more imaginary exit strategies.
And this exit, I mean, and what's interesting is to me anyway, is that it's connected to that very first image of the cosmonaut who should have gone first, and having the Yiddish letters of the Soviet Union superimposed on his head as though to suggest that this is where the conflict lies between a Soviet Union that's defined by using its Jewish talent and you have a Soviet Union that exploits it. And was this fact or this feeling lost upon the Soviet Jews of the 1960s?
There were different circles, Jewish circles in the Soviet Union. Some were more mainstream, some were more kind of alternative thinking. But I think there was a sense of, in general, um, there were a lot of Jewish people working in the field of science and technology in the Soviet Union. So in a way, there was clearly a sense of, connection to whatever technological investments Soviet Union is achieving, right? So there were so many Jewish engineers and Jewish scientists. Uh, so um, so in that sense, Yiddish Cosmos has a lot of kind of um, a lot of kind of genuine connection to Soviet history, right? So my project it's not all legendary. There's a lot of kind of genuine facts that from which I depart and
Yeah, no, I mean
gain some faith in
the
them.
the departing from the facts uh, is not really departing from it, but rather painting a larger picture that would probably normally not be part of a given painting. So I want to make sure, I'm on the same page about that. I don't mean to ask questions purely of fact or purely of portrayal. But anyway, enough of my questions. Let's go see some landscapes.
Super, thank you. So the second project that I'd like to share with you is called Landscapes of the Jewish Autonomous Region. And when I say Jewish Autonomous Region, I mean Birobidzhan. So historically, so Birobidzhan is Jewish Autonomous Region in the far east of the Russian Federation. In the past, it was in the far east of the Soviet Union. So it's an area that was designated as a Jewish autonomous region in late 1920s, and then it became an official autonomous region in 1930s, early 1930s, 1934, I believe. So it's on the far east. It's next to the Chinese border, and it's a very large area. It's the size of Belgium, I believe, um, more or less. And I was very fascinated with the history of Birobidzhan, or the Jewish Autonomous Region. So the official name of the entire region is Jewish Autonomous Region, and Birobidzhan is the capital city. But in in the press, usually when they say Birobidzhan, they mean the entire region, not just the capital city. Um, so it's an interesting, very um, provocative and um, kind of strange uh, story, right? But as part of many wild kind of imaginary things that the Soviet Union was creating in 1920s, 1930s, Birobidzhan was created, a Jewish autonomous region, and um, it still exists today. I've been working on this subject since 2009, but for the first time I visited the area only in 2017. So I've only been there once in 2017, but I've been doing work about this area for a while before I visited, and I'll probably do more projects on it, about it. Um, so it was created. The Soviet government created it, and there was a lot of enthusiasm internationally for this area, for this Birobidzhan project, for this Soviet Jewish project in the Far East. Um, it was a big project in the U.S. among the American left. When Birobidzhan was created, 2,000 Americans, families, pick up their things and moved from New York and other cities to Birobidzhan. Most of them came back in 1937 because after 1937 you couldn't live in the Soviet Union as a foreigner. You had to give up your foreign citizenship and take on Soviet citizenship. So I believe most or all of the Americans left. Jewish Americans left Birobidzhan, went back to the US. So this is a map of the region. So this is the Trans-Siberian Railway. China is here. So this is a river that divide Amur River. It separates China from Russia. And so in 1930s, the project started. There was a lot of enthusiasm. A lot of people came from the Soviet Union, from the West. Then, after the war, after the after the Second World War, there was a major anti-Jewish purge around the Soviet Union, including in Birobidzhan. So at that point, we can say that after the Second World War, the project was very um, kind of frozen. I mean, um, it was never, abolished. Birobidzhan still exists. The Jewish Autonomous Region still exists, but the Jewish population as of now is about 2%, um, which is probably the same percentage as in Russia in general. And um, but the project is wild, imaginary, utopian, you can say. So I was very interested to do work about it. So I have a collection of Soviet materials about Birobidzhan. So I've collected books and postcards and stamps about the Soviet Jewish Autonomous Region. So here you see uh, something from my collection, Yiddish Автономия Gegend, in Yiddish. So it was a book published in 1980s. It was already the 50th anniversary of Birobidzhan in 1984. So it was published in Yiddish, English, and Russian, this book. Uh, uh, so this is probably the oldest book about Birobidzhan that I have, little booklet that David Bergelsen, the great Yiddish writer, wrote, after he visited Birobidzhan in 1936, I believe. And also there is this famous Soviet movie called Seekers of Happiness. It's a black and white movie that came out in 1936, quite popular, with wonderful music, um, and um, and it talks about a Jewish family from the West. Well, they travel by boat to Birobidzhan, to the Soviet Union, and then to Birobidzhan by train. So you can imagine that they come from the Americas. It's not clear if they come from the US, Canada, South America, but it was a long journey by boat. So it must have been the Americas. So it's a family who immigrated to the US, to the Americas at the turn of the century, and now 30 years later, they're coming to the Soviet Union and they're settling in Birobidzhan and they are trying to integrate into the Soviet Jewish life in Birobidzhan. Some members of the family are successful in their kind of assimilation, integration into Birobidzhan, and some just cannot become part of this project. So there is some interesting kind of dialectic or dynamic within the family, kind of. Um, so it's kind of also interesting. So I was very interested in how landscapes are depicted in that movie. As the train enters Birobidzhan, you can see beautiful fields. You see deep space, the Amur River, and beautiful empty spaces, deep space, the sky. Um, so I was very interested in that imagery of kind of relationship to the land, right? To physical environment that the movie showed. So I painted some of the landscapes from that movie, but I would paint them. So you're looking at stills from the movie right now. But when I started painting, I would paint them like this. So these are very flatly painted oil on canvas paintings, quite large, maybe 5 feet by 3 feet, and they show the landscapes, but from the movie Seekers of Happiness, but very flat. And then I'm adding words that conceptual words that I think have to do with this movie and this idea of relationship between uh, um, Yiddish culture and landscape, Yiddish culture and space. So you read it in English, but then you can't quite finish each sentence in English. So there is this kind of uh, uh, some type of um, uh, destruction at the end, some type of um, something that upsets or offsets your reading. But all these paintings I painted from the stills of this movie, Seekers of Happiness. So the terms have to do with the Jewish discourse, right? I think definitely for the Soviet Jewish discourse, but I'm sure it's pretty international or more global. Um, so overall, I made about maybe 10, 20, about 15, I think, paintings like this. So there is always Yiddish letter in in each work. So part of this project, I drew maps of Birobidzhan. So you're looking at the silhouette of Birobidzhan. So China is here, the rest of the Soviet Union is here and to the left, but so just a silhouette of the land, right? But I would use red, I'm sorry, gold ink, and I would write in my own, less than perfect translation, um, sayings or proverbs about homeland, about connection uh, to homeland um, from different minority languages of the Russian Federation. So this particular saying, "The sky above me is my dear father, the land around me is my dear mother," it comes from Buryat language, right? So one of the minority languages of the Russian Federation, and Russian Federation has maybe 200 minority languages. So I would translate it into Yiddish from Russian. So somebody translated from Buryat into Russian, and then I would translate from Russian into Yiddish, not less than perfect Yiddish. And then I would make another drawing, the same map, but this time it's from Tuvan language, um, and someone translated from Tuvan into Russian, and then I would translate it from Russian into Yiddish. A bird has a nest and the man has a homeland. Um, so, so I've also made maybe 10 drawings like this. Visually, they look exactly the same. You see just silhouette of Birobidzhan written, drawn as words, as text. But each time I would use different saying or proverb. Each has to do with homeland. Um, and each comes from different minority languages of Russia that I would translate into Yiddish. Okay. Um, so this piece was also part of this exhibition, and this it's a book made of separate prints, and this is the flora and fauna of the Jewish Autonomous Region. So I was using images from Soviet um, propaganda book about Birobidzhan, and I would use images of plants, flowers, insects that live in the Jewish Autonomous Region, and then I would um, pair them in a very arbitrary way, not very logical way, with different personal Yiddish names. So photography is not mine, but photography is borrowed from a Soviet propaganda book about Birobidzhan. So in this image, I just wanted to give you a sense of the scale of the paintings. So this is in the exhibition in Budapest, Hungary, uh, one of the exhibitions in where I showed the Jewish the landscapes of the Jewish Autonomous Region project. This is also for the sense of scale of the images. Um, so I have a few more projects on Birobidzhan. Not sure, Zach, if you want to.
Let's tie them in all together and then we'll go back.
Okay, sure, sure. Um, so uh, this project, A Gift to Birobidzhan, uh, is based on the story of this exhibition that of this collection of artworks that American artists collected in 1930s to establish an art museum in Birobidzhan. Uh, so American artists got together and collected 200 works of art in 1936. They exhibited it in Boston, and then they shipped it to Birobidzhan from the US. So the collection, so I'd like to show you some of the works in the collection. Some works in the collection are by major American artists such as William Gropper and Hugo Gellert and Max Weber, important modern painter, Louis Lozovic, also a well-known artist. Um, so this collection, it was sent to Birobidzhan in 1936. It reached Birobidzhan in 1937, and 1937 is a time of the great so-called Great Purges in the Soviet Union. It was a major purge of the leadership and the cultural elite of the Soviet Union, but also of regular people as well. And um, so by 1937, there was no one really in Birobidzhan to properly accept this collection because the leadership was purged. And this collection of 200 works by American artists was stuck in Moscow, and it was uh, looted, and some artworks got into some museums and private collections, but it never really reached Birobidzhan. So I was kind of fascinated by this story, and I decided to create my own collection, create a new collection of artworks by contemporary artists, American and international. And I hope to bring it to Birobidzhan And to complete this historical gesture from 1930s, so bring new art to Birobidzhan and gift it to Birobidzhan. Um, and so unfortunately, this particular project did not work out, so I couldn't quite accomplish this project. Yeah, I can talk about issues why this didn't work out, but I'm still currently in the possession of this collection. So this collection, and I'm going to show you this collection. So these are the works in this new collection that I assembled um, in 2009. Some works, some video works, some objects, some installations, and you see the name of the artist who gifted the piece at the bottom of the slide. There are some paintings, some photography, some small sculptures in this collection. Um, so I'm still currently in the possession of this collection, and at some point, maybe I'll be able to bring it to Birobidzhan and properly gift it to Birobidzhan. So the main issue that I ran into in trying to gift this collection is that the collection was a little too contemporary for my contacts in Birobidzhan. They felt that people would not understand. There was no clear. There were some Jewish related works, but most works were not directly Jewish related. And so my contacts in Birobidzhan liked the concept, but they didn't like the art. So I felt, well, probably not, it's not time yet for this collection to come to Birobidzhan. So it's kind of a stateless collection still, homeless collection, right? I'm still in the possession of that collection as a temporary kind of curator, temporary keeper, but this is a collection for Birobidzhan, so maybe one day it will uh, be uh, accepted in Birobidzhan with open arms, and it will, and the gesture from 1936 will be completed. So these are all works from that collection. Um, so and maybe one more quick project about Birobidzhan, and then um, so when I went to Birobidzhan for the first time in 2017, what was really um, interesting for me to notice is that there was some Jewish life in Birobidzhan, but it's not a lot. But there is a very visible kind of renaissance of Eastern Orthodox Christianity in Birobidzhan, because the majority of people who live in Birobidzhan are not Jewish. So I photographed churches in Birobidzhan, that Eastern Orthodox churches that were built um, in 19 after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and I pair these images with Yiddish captions. So I always show an image with the Yiddish caption, and the name of the church and where it's located, whether it's in the city of Birobidzhan or in another another town. So to me, this project that I call the Diocese of Birobidzhan, I think it's a very accurate kind of capture of what Birobidzhan is now. In the post-Soviet time, where the Jewish utopia is all kind of absent and kind of all disappeared, when the utopia and the hope of Jewish autonomy in Birobidzhan kind of remains a thing in the past, something that never fully was realized. Uh, but 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 at present, right, at least 2017, okay, this is my kind of take on Birobidzhan. I think this is very accurate, um, in a way, testament to, I guess, the failure of the Birobidzhan project, right? Or maybe it's a new Birobidzhan, right? It's kind of uh, the post-Soviet reality. And and the contrast and kind of conflict with the Yiddish caption, I think that kind of gives a sense of um, the reality of Birobidzhan. So this project is from 2017. Zach, please let me know if you would like me to go to the next to the Yiddishland Pavillion, or
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment before we go on to that, or a question, I suppose, which is it seems as though there's a lot of influence about the failure, not just of Jewish nationalism in Birobidzhan, but rather the failures of nationalisms within the Russian Federation and Soviet Union before that. Was this a sort of a commentary that you intended to make, or how did you think about this?
well, first of all, I think I was attracted to the story of Birobidzhan because it's such a wild story, right? And it's a very Soviet story, and for the majority of the Soviet Jews, Birobidzhan was not an issue. I think I remember asking my father about Birobidzhan when I was a boy in Moscow, and he totally dismissed it. He said there are no Jewish people there, so kind of it seems to be something not really viable. But there were a lot of experiments, kind of autonomy experiments in the Soviet Union. There was a Republic of Volga Germans in 1930s, which was kind of terminated and at the beginning of the Second World War. And there were other um, interesting kind of experiments with nationalism, but uh, um, but it was a nationalism kind of uh, more in a cultural sense, right? In a cultural sense, maybe linguistic sense, but those were autonomies within the Soviet Union. They were not fully autonomous, right? So in that sense, um, mm, but I understand that in the best case scenario, they could provide some cultural autonomy and conditions for developing a minority culture, minority languages.
Thank you. All right, let's go see the pavilion.
Uh, yes, absolutely. So Yiddishland Pavillion, it's a more recent project. I'm still working on it. It's a collaborative project. I'm working on it with Maria Waits, a curator based in the UK. So I'm acting more in a curatorial capacity uh, on this project. So it's created for the Venice Biennale. So Venice Biennale is is an international exhibition, a large-scale international exhibition, a festival, a contemporary art festival that happens in Venice, Italy, every other year. And uh, the way Venice Biennale functions is that each nation uh, represents, national art, right? So there is this beautiful garden, Giardini, in Venice, and all the great powers have beautiful little pavilions built, and then they house their national exhibitions inside those pavilions, showcasing, the highest achievements of national visual art. Um, and So the Venice Biennale is structured around the national representation. Nation states present themselves. So we wanted to do something um, for Yiddishland, right? For this imaginary transnational cultural space where Yiddish is spoken. We wanted to do a project for. We wanted to see how um, Eastern European, Jewish uh, story could fit in the Venice Biennale. Where would it fit? Um, uh, and we ended up not creating an exhibition. We ended up not um, renting a space, but instead uh, we decided to create a series of interventions or performances that happen in the city of Venice, in the Venice, on the Biennale grounds, on the Venice Biennial grounds, and those performances are temporary, right? They're temporary. They could be staged multiple times in different locations during the Venice Biennale, at different sites, and we wanted to be in between national pavilions. We wanted to be kind of entering different national pavilions and trying to kind of fit or place the Eastern European Jewish kind of narrative within national narratives of various world nations, European nations. And the piece that you are looking at right now is by American artists and architects, Julia Hedges and G. Lester. So they created a project. Um, uh, uh, so they were relocating an American Jewish camp, summer camp, to Venice. So it's kind of uh, uh, so there is an American connection, uh, Jewish American connection in this project, and we restaged it in multiple locations in Venice. You're looking at some close-up shots of the piece. Um, and Julia Hedges, she's reading a statement about this project in front of this art piece that they created. So we were folding it, unfolding it multiple times in different locations. And when it's folded, then Julia can walk with this piece. So the piece becomes a bag. And the piece was called Camp Doikite. And Doikite, it's it's the term from the uh, Jewish Labor Bund from Eastern Europe, and Doigkeit means here-ness, right? Being here, being here where you are, um, living where you live, right? Staying where you are, and mm, uh, so this is Julia walking around with her piece around Venice. Um, so just to clarify, again, I was working in a more curatorial capacity on this project, co-organizing this project. The art pieces were actually done by the participating artist. This piece is by um, Julia Hedges and G. Lester. So this is another project from um, Yiddishland Pavillion, the Hirnes Wagon by Daniil Turetsky. And it's a sculptural piece. Um, so Daniel arrives with this, rolling this bag, and then he um, assembles the sculpture from his bag, right? And then once the performance is over, the sculpture goes back inside the bag. Um, so it's about this uh, temporary architecture, right? A movable architecture, temporary architecture that could be built and then put back into the suitcase and then rolled away. And so here Daniel is assembling the sculpture in front of the Hungarian pavilion. Sometimes it's very large, sometimes it's small, so it um, depends on the situation and on, on time. So it's okay. It's in front of Poland, in front of Romania. Or it could be fully assembled. And the images that Daniel attaches to the structure come from a Jewish folk culture and mm, Yiddish culture, Jewish culture. Okay, so this is uh, pretty much assembled. And the last piece that I'll show you, it's a piece by Konstantin Boehm called Wandering Pavilion. And it's a piece of wearable architecture. So it's a suit or an art piece that a person wears on the person's body. So this piece is the pavilion. So in this case, when a person wears this pavilion and walks around, the person becomes the Yiddishland Pavilion. The person is carrying the Yiddishland Pavilion on their body. And the piece, states that it's a Yiddishland Pavilion, and it also informs about other projects that are part of the Yiddishland Pavilion. We had 5 projects this year. There is a link to our website. There is a Yiddish text. There is English text. So that's how the artist was imagining uh, the pavilion walking around, entering different national pavilions, different national exhibitions at the Venice Biennale, and um, and uh, and then and now you're actually seeing this project in action. Our performer, um, her name was Claudia. Claudia Casagrande, she walked around performing Konstantin Boehm's project, right? So she was the performer wearing the pavilion and acting out the pavilion. So you can see her entering national pavilions and sometimes interacting with visitors. Some people would ask her questions or uh, uh, so, read the information that we provided. Okay, so here's she's in front of Romania, in front of Germany, entering in front of Serbia, uh, talking to some of the visitors. Um, but also she walked around the city itself, not only um, uh, in the Biennale grounds, but also around the city. And she's in the middle of the main square of the Venetian ghetto, the Jewish ghetto of Venice. So this particular image. So this is pretty much this in the middle of the ghetto.
Well, first, thank you very much, Evgeny. That was that was a complete journey through not just Yiddishland, but the pursuit of it. I want to I know we're a little over the hour, but since people are here, I want to give them opportunities to maybe maybe the next 5 minutes or so ask any questions you may have. You can unmute yourself. And yes, and a Shaynem Dank. Yeah, no Himl. Um, otherwise, I'll pose a couple of questions and we'll be off on our way. So first, I want to open up for everyone else who's here. You can even write them in the chat if you'd like. Um, but if not, I'll start with my own question to follow up with the Yiddishland Pavilion, which is Yiddishland Pavilion seems like it's designed to provoke reactions from people. It's supposed to challenge it's supposed to intrude in places where it's a little awkward to be from what it looks like with everything traveling around. And you explained to me before this call that this was the architecture year of the Biennale. There's a previous art year, and they rotate. And I was looking a bit up about this, and this has been a thing since 1891, since the it has been a constant of the pulse of a national identity from the very summit of that concept. How have people reacted? Like what's your general read on the reaction they have and what you might have expected?
Yes. So we will definitely. So the project was unofficial, right? So we did not even ask permission of the Venice Biennale to do it, right? So in a way, it was yeah. So it was a guerrilla project. Reactions. We've had um, good reactions from the visitors. So I heard someone shout, "This is my pavilion." Some visitor, would shout, or people would stop Claudia and ask her questions about the pavilion, and she was happy to reply. Actually, one of her roles was to engage with the audience if people ask, right? Not specifically kind of approach visitors, but She knew about other projects of the Yiddishland Pavilion. She knew that it's a Eastern European kind of transnational pavilion, Jewish transnational pavilion, and um, but so the reactions were positive. I would say. Um, so I would say the last project that I showed, the Konstantin Boehm's project, the Wandering Pavilion, certainly in certain cases we can say it could be an intrusion, right? Maybe into into another pavilion, but then the other two were a little bit less, I guess, more organic and mm, but at the same time, even that intrusion was very contained. It was it's a suit, it's a costume, right? Um, but yeah, but I think it captures kind of the Jewish narrative, right? And this project, the Wandering Pavilion. Uh,
And I guess the follow-up question I'll have is it seems as though Yiddish art has been more of your focus. I mean, you've of course been interested in these things for a long time. You talked about Birobidzhan being an interest of yours since 2009. Um, but you have a variety of different kinds of artistic directions you pursue. What's been drawing you to Yiddish, and what does Yiddishland, or the lack thereof, or the version of it that you're representing right now as the part of the Yiddishland Museum of Modern Art. What is this saying to you now, and what is do you hope to have it say to others?
Right. Well, I mean, as a Jewish immigrant artist, I feel kind of comfortable in the Yiddishland Museum of Modern Art, right? So it feels like it's not. Uh, uh, it feels like I belong, right? It fits me well. So I think even non-Yiddish projects of mine, non-Yiddish related projects of mine, I think would fit the Yiddishland Museum of Modern Art. But Yiddish, I I came to Yiddish, I think, more consciously, maybe around year 2000, and then it was part of kind of reclaiming my language, right? Reclaiming my culture. But that was already 5 years after I came to the U.S. from Moscow. So so. Uh, but I tried to study Yiddish with my grandmother in 1980s, but I didn't get very far. So I think in around 2000, I think that since then I became more consciously interested in Yiddish, but I only started making art that has to do with Yiddish maybe 10 years later. So I think interest in Yiddish came first, and then I kind of found a way maybe to connect it to contemporary art.
Mm. Um, so I think I'll end there here, but I want to say firstly, again, a Shannon Donk. And also, I know we've seen some of your exhibitions here at the Vendy Museum. I'm hoping one way or another you can come out to LA. We can bring your work to LA. In the meantime, we have this to propagandize the public with, and we'll move on from there. But yes, thank you very much, and see everyone around.
Thank you so much, Doug.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.